Wednesday morning, the first thing on our agenda was dealing with this problem that Billy's having with the hood on his S10. Evidently, the new hood is a lot more flimsy than the old one, and every time he tries to make a pull out on the highway, air gets up underneath the hood and it tries to lift off the truck. So Jeremy, Rob, and Kenny are going to work on that this afternoon after we get done eating lunch. And Jeremy was nice enough to stop down to the filling station and bring pizza back for everybody. Of course, Vicky had something for him to do also. She's got to make a run to the post office today. So she commandeered Uncle Bucko to take her down there this morning and help her carry all those packages in. I, on the other hand, stayed back to shop and started getting some equipment ready to do some dirt work out back, where the creek's nearly washed out my culverts and makes it impossible to get to the backyard to mow it. And that's coming here pretty soon. With the way the weather's been around here, the grass is already starting to green up. You guys need anything before I leave?
Jeremy just said he needed to reach around. I'm kind of getting nervous about being out here.
The kids are going to stay back here and work on the S10 today, and this afternoon I plan to go up and see Uncle Bob at the machine shop to see how things are coming with the Malibu engine. Now, just before it dropped a valve, I was making really good progress on this car. We had just put a brand new converter in it after making some dyno pulls down in North Carolina. Perfect Converter Company got me hooked up with a brand new 9.5-inch billet nitrous converter, and we had just put it in the car when a valve keeper broke on number 3 intake valve, nearly destroying the entire engine. Ever since that happened, Bob's been busy ordering parts in and trying to piece together another small block Chevy for my old Malibu. He ordered in a brand new World Products Motown block and a brand new set of pistons. But at this point, I still don't have a set of heads to replace my old AFRs to top off my new short block. So I'm waiting to hear from the guys up at Trick Flow to see if they can get me a set of heads put together by the end of the week. For right now, I just want to check in on Bob and see how things are going with balancing this rotating assembly and putting a short block together. You about ready to go home, Uncle Bob?
I am. Supper time.
Well, I won't take up too much of your time. I know it's late. You've got this thing bored. It's honed?
Yes, sir.
The piston to wall clearance, you said, is about 5.
Yeah, sir.
And it's 40, no, not 4030. It's 4155. Yeah, it's a 400 block. And we've gone ahead and zero decked it. So you've already had the rotating assembly in it to measure deck height.
Yes, sir.
And took 29,000 off each side, or that's
Yes.
what you're in the process of doing.
Yes, sir.
So where does that put us? Maybe putting the short block together late this week or this next week or something?
Yes, sir. We get this deck tomorrow, and the crank is being respun. We get the bob weight set up on that,
And somehow these pistons were lighter than the old ones, so that's nice because we're not having to add weight to the crank. We're actually taking weight off the...
just got to take a few grams out of it, and we'll be ready to get that short block put together.
So this is going together pretty simple this time, for the most
Well,
part.
so far, so good.
It could
I'm
always,
saying anything
the
on
wheels
that.
could always fall off.
Oh, yes.
So I just got a message from Trick Flow, and my head should be done maybe Friday.
Oh, we'll see if we can get this close to being that far along.
While I'm up visiting Bob at the machine shop, Billy, Rob, and Jeremy are back at my place, and they're getting ready to make a pull on the S10 again out on the highway. This time, they've got the grill blocked off with some sheet metal to see if they can't keep some of this air from getting underneath the hood. So Billy backs the little truck outside and lets it warm up before they take it up the road and try to make a pull on it. About the same time the guys were figuring out that the hood is going to have some more bracing under the front, I was on my way back home to eat dinner, do some editing, and start getting ready to do that dirt work out back because according to the forecast, tomorrow is the last day of good weather we're going to have before the weather turns to shit again on Friday. So that's my plan for Thursday. And while I'm getting ready to do that work out back, the boys are in the shop working on the S10, and Billy asked Jeremy if he could go up to the farm and dig into his secret stash reserve of S10 parts. You see, the glove box door on Billy's S10 has a broken latch, and Jeremy just so happens to have an old parts truck up at the farm, And unbelievably, the truck is still in the same condition as the day he parked it. But he reluctantly removed the glove box latch and brought it back down to our house and replaced the one that was broken in Billy's truck. By that time, I'd already gotten busy out back pushing dirt with the excavator. I was just trying to get this ravine filled back in when the supervisor of all projects stumbled onto my activities. What do you want, woman?
I came out to see what all the commotion was back here.
There's no commotion back here.
Well, you got Kenny playing in the creek.
He likes to play in the creek.
I do have waders up there on the porch that go to your knee.
He needs something that goes clear to his neck to cover his ass crack. Okay, so maybe I was working on more than just pushing this ravine in. I also wanted to work on building a little bit of a crawler course for Tommy and Robbie so they can drive their remote control rock crawlers through the creek and up the bank on the other side. And I have to admit, I have been giving some thought to getting one for myself, as Billy's talking about getting one too. Anyway, I was making pretty good progress back there until my other supervisor showed up, and she had to join me in the tractor and in the excavator. Wherever I am, she wants to be. So she stayed right in the tractor with me for about the next hour and a half while I finished up grading all this dirt down into that ravine. And then we turned our attention to the 5th scale track. Now the track had started to be taken over by some grass and weeds last season, and this stuff hasn't really come back yet. So I figured now is a perfect opportunity to grade that stuff off the top of the track surface and drag it down in there to that ravine and use it for cover material. Everything was going pretty good until June Pup noticed that Tommy was out there with his little electric rock crawler playing in the creek. And once she saw that thing out the window, there was no keeping her in the cab of that tractor. She ended up getting covered in mud playing in that creek, and Tommy had to give her a bath before Vicky saw how muddy she was and killed both of us. So that brings us to Friday morning, and I've got a trip planned today to run up to Tallmadge, Ohio. Now, if the name of this town sounds familiar, there's probably a reason. Not only is it the home of Trick Flow, it's also the home of Summit Racing Equipment. Normally it would only be about a 2.5 hour drive from our house up to Summit, but since I'm in no particular hurry today, I decided that me and the 64 were going to take the scenic route. Instead of taking 70 over to 77, I took State Route 16 out of Newark, through Cambridge and Newcomerstown, over to 77 towards Cleveland and Canton. I ended up driving right past the Football Hall of Fame on my way to Tallmadge and decided I'd stop at Summit first before I went up to Trick Flow. Now, I've only been into Summit's showroom once or twice in my entire life, but I couldn't help but notice on this trip the amount of remote control stuff they had on display in the toys section. They had everything in there from drag cars to rock crawlers to pedal toys, antique signs, gas pumps, and slot car sets, not to mention almost anything and everything you'd ever need for your hot rod. There was, however, one thing I noticed on this trip that just aggravated the shit out of me. I call it the ugly engine dress-up kit. I guess the idea is to make an LS look presentable. Thankfully, I don't have to rely on one of those ugly-ass engines to get myself around. I jumped in my real small block Chevy-powered 64 C10 and headed up to Trick Flow around the circle up downtown Tallmadge. Trick Flow's building doesn't even have a sign, so if you don't know what's in there, you would never guess what's inside. A full-blown high-performance cylinder head and intake manifold manufacturing facility complete with dyno room and all the CNC equipment you could ever need to crank out cylinder heads for small and big block Chevys, small block and big block Fords, small and big block Chryslers, not to mention LS's. But what I'm most interested in today is this brand new set of Super 230s and an intake manifold to match. So this cylinder head is intended for large cubic inch 23 degree small block Chevys, 400 cubic inches and more, correct? Ideally. I mean, you can use them on smaller, but...
Yeah, right, but it's the 70cc combustion chamber, so, something for a big bore.
Right. So it's a 230cc intake runner, but these heads use all traditional 23 degree valve train components, like standard rockers, no shaft mount rockers. You can use them, but you don't have to.
Correct.
You don't have to have offset lifters. You don't have to have offset rocker arms or any of that.
Correct. Yeah. It's just standard exhaust.
Standard
rotation.
exhaust flange.
Yep.
Standard intake flange.
Intake.
Now, what's this intake manifold you got here? This thing is ginormous inside.
Just released it last year. We showed it at SEMA in, I believe, 18 or 19. But like everything when COVID hit, it put a lot of new products on the back burner.
This thing is humongous inside. This also is intended to be used, they're match set intake and cylinder heads and they're meant for big cubic inch small blocks. You don't want to put this on 327 or
Right.
350 probably
Yeah, I mean,
either, really.
it's designed, and the port's really close to our 230 head. We verify if it will work on our 215 head, but we don't suggest bolting it on a 195 head or a 200 or 210 anything.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
Because the runners are really large, so you've got to have a pretty good size small block underneath of it and a pretty good size set of cylinder heads to be able to use that intake to its maximum.
Correct.
Yeah. I may just have the engine to put these things on.
You might. And just to give a little testimonial to this, one of our other sponsor racers, Matt Daddis.
Yeah, I know Matt.
So, Matt's a good and well-known bracket racer.
Oh yeah,
We call him
absolutely.
50K Matt.
50K Matt.
50K Matt. We gave him that manifold, and he had a 2925
Edelbrock.
Edelbrock Super Victor on it. It was ported.
Pretty standard
Yep.
thing, you know.
And he unbolted it, bolted that manifold on, no port work, and picked up 700s and 1.5 on it.
Oh.
And so
And he was using this set of heads.
this set of heads. The only thing he changed was the intake manifold.
So this exact set of heads, and just swap the Edelbrock ported intake to this one, and picked up 1.5 miles and 700s.
Yeah.
That's pretty incredible. How many cubic inch?
427. It's similar to your combination.
After I picked up my new cylinder heads and intake manifold at TrickFlow Friday afternoon, I was really excited to take them up and drop them off at Bob's Saturday morning. While I was on my way up there, Bob was busy checking main and rod bearing clearances in my new short block. The new main bearings were all torqued down in the block, and after miking the main bearing journals of the crank, he established that the main bearing clearances were all going to be right at 0.003 of an inch, which thankfully is exactly where we want it. Sometimes when you're putting a brand new engine combination together, you get lucky, and other times you don't. Bob's always quick to remind me, machine work is all about chasing numbers, and of course, stacked up tolerances. While no engine is perfect, Bob does his absolute best to get everything as close to perfect as he can. And unfortunately, sometimes that means Bob has to work Saturdays and Sundays, especially during racing season when we tear up stuff faster than he can fix it. And we're not his only customers, so he's basically trying to work around the clock to keep his head above water and keep everybody's projects moving forward. And even though he's this busy, he still takes the time on a Saturday to let me drop my cylinder heads off, and he actually ends up pulling the heads apart just to double check valve spring pressures, just for his own peace of mind to make sure that the cylinder heads are set up right for my hydraulic roller cam from Iski. I had given all the cam specs and information over to the guys at TrickFlow, and they had the valve springs set exactly where they needed to be.
Valve springs look good. Pressure's what Iski asked for, so we're good to go.
Block's done. Main
Block
bearing.
is done. The bearings are checked. Oil clearance is set. We did 3,000s across the board, and moving on from here.
All right, guys, welcome back. So it's Sunday night, and I'm out here in the shop getting this video finished up. And as you may have seen on Facebook, for the last, I don't know, a couple of weeks, me and Boost have been going back and forth a little bit, digging at each other about carburetors and fuel injection. But we were up at On 3 Performance the other day, and Billy was getting some injectors cleaned. And Chris just so happened to stop in there and dropped off his all-wheel drive F-150 to have Chad and the guys up at On 3 put twin turbos on it. And he immediately started throwing shade on my old carbureted Malibu.
I see Pop's eyeballing it. He don't want to get next to the Malibu. That's all I'm saying.
hell I don't. So it kind of escalated from there. So I'm going to probably stop up there and visit Chad and the guys maybe tomorrow and do a little walkthrough and see how Boosted's pickup truck's coming. Outside of that, I've got a trip I got to take up to Bob. I'm going to try and go up there and help him work on that 421 tomorrow. There's a lot of parts that need cleaned up. That's stuff that I can definitely do to take some pressure off Bob because he's buried in work up there. So I'm probably going to go do that tomorrow. Let's see, what else we got going on? Oh, another news. So everybody has seen Billy's S10's got fuel injection on it now, and it's 18 degree head from TrickFlow. That means that his entire 23-degree blow-through carbureted setup is just sitting on the shelf. So Billy and I have been talking about it, and I think this might be the time to bring back my old Nova. The Nova needs a lot of work. It is basically an all original chassis 71 Nova. It still has drum brakes all the way around. It does have a 12 bolt with a Mosier spool, or no, it's got a Strange spool in it. I think it's got Strange or Mosier axles, one or the other. But it's got a factory Nova 12 bolt in it. We're definitely going to have to put brakes on it. We're definitely going to have to do some suspension work. The car definitely needs a lot of body work, but that's going to be last on the list. Since I have my old 421 up there at Bob's, well, the block's up there. That block is going to have to go 4185 to clean it up. So I was talking to Bob the other day, and I thought, you know what? Why don't we just put a 4-inch arm in it and build a 440 out of it, a 440 cubic inch small block Chevy. And so if I go get a set of heads from Trick Flow, maybe another set of these 230s and one of those intakes like I just picked up for the Malibu, that might make a really nasty combination to put in my Nova with a couple of turbos. We've already got the whole kit. All I have to do is buy a set of turbos. And I think ATM is going to build me a brand new ATM blow-through carburetor, because yes, they actually do build blow-through carburetors. So that's coming up. I definitely want to get this 55 Chevy done though before spring, because I want to be able to drive that car this summer. And we're going to start looking at maybe finding some place to take that 55 Chevy to get it painted. So that's on the horizon. But for right now, we got to get this Mustang given away. That's coming up here probably in April. By the way, that car has a wastegate coming this week. Billy ordered a new wastegate for it. Should be in maybe tomorrow. So with a little luck, we'll get that wastegate fixed, and maybe we can take the car, go test it a little bit, and see what the car runs on gate pressure. I don't have a boost controller in it. I know the Holly could probably control it, but I'll have to talk to Billy about that. So that's all stuff that's coming up on the horizon. But if you see old Chris Hamilton down there, and he's clear down in freaking Kangarooville right now. He's in Australia, dinking around down there. If you see that turkey, tell him the Cracker Barrel's coming for him.